Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter, and this is Cookies and Canvas for Kids. All right, so today we're going to be painting bird trees at the Eiffel Tower, and I'm going to be eating my traditional French butter cookies. So let's paint our canvas and eat our cookies. All right, so what we're going to be using for materials today is a stretched and primed 16 by 20 canvas, which you could certainly switch up the size if you're painting along with me, but that's what I'm going to be using. I'll be using acrylic paint today. The colors are titanium white, Mars black, I have cobalt blue, and fire red. And of course you could switch up the colors, but I'm using these for a specific reason today. And then I am going to be using 3 brushes today. I have a 1/2 inch wide bristle brush, I have a number 6 round brush, and I have a number 2 round brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. You're going to need a cup of water for washing your brushes and also a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I'm going to be providing you with a couple of different resources. One of them is a link where you could purchase this entire paint kit. It's got the same size canvas, same paint color, same brushes that I'm using, so that's there for you. But what is also down there is a free downloadable image of the final painting. So you could just go and click through that link and print yourself a copy of the final painting. That sometimes helps with a visual reference as you go through the painting process. There's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you too that you could certainly print. But the most important thing that's down below is a recipe for my delicious French butter cookies. They're traditional cookies in France. I'm going to try and pronounce them. I'll probably butcher it. I think they're called symbolize breton. I don't know. I could be wrong. That's the way it looks like for me. But that's the recipe that's down below, and they're super delicious. So that's all we're going to need. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the first step is we're going to be painting the sky. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using just black and white, but I'm going to be making a couple of shades of gray for my sky. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take some of my black, and I'm going to just move it into another compartment here. I want a dark gray and a medium gray. So I've got some black already in there. I'm just going to scoop up some white and just spin it around so I get a nice dark gray. It doesn't have to, we don't want it to be black. That's the whole thing. We want it to be a little bit lighter than black. And then I'm just going to, with my dirty brush, just pick up some more white and make myself a lighter shade of gray. So I didn't pick up any more black. I just used what was on my brush. And now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to make myself 2 markers. They're going to be where I want my sky to come down to. So I want it to come down about 3/4 of the way. So I eyeball my halfway point, and then between here and here, I cut the difference. That's going to be my quarter-way point. I'm going to make a mark with my gray. I'm going to use my brush as a ruler to mark it like that. Come over to my opposing side and make another dot at about the same height. And that's going to tell my eye where to stop. So now that I've done that, I'm going to pick up, I'm not washing my brush, I'm just going to pick up some of my darker gray. And I'm going to start at the top of my sky. I like to paint the edges of my canvas as I go along. And I'm going to do a nice dark gray at the top of my sky. And then once I've got this coming down a little ways, then I'm going to pick up that medium gray and I'm going to get this to kind of blend in. What I'm going for is for my sky to get lighter and lighter as it gets down to the bottom. So in a minute, I'm not going to pick up any more gray. I'm just going to pick up white. And what will happen is my sky will get lighter and lighter as it comes down that canvas. So I might go one more time into my light gray, and then my next time I'm just going to be picking up white. And it'll get lighter and lighter, and I'm going to come all the way down to my, my dots that I've already made. And you don't have to worry about it being perfect with the color. This is meant to maybe look like a nice evening sky or a night sky, and maybe there's some like little clouds flowing by. If you've got some light spots and some dark spots, that's totally cool. But if you can get your sky to be lighter and lighter as it comes down towards that horizon line, that's kind of the goal here. You don't want it to go all the way white, but you definitely want it to get lighter and lighter as it comes down there. And then we are going to use this same brush for the next step, but you're going to want to wash it and dry it. So once you get that sky all nice and done, and you can see I'm just kind of going back and forth to make sure I've got it all blended in together. Once you've done this, you can take that brush and just wash it and dry it. Maybe take a bite of your delicious cookie and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting the first layer of the ground. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using white. And if you have some of your lighter gray, we're going to be using gray also, but I'm going to probably pick up my lighter gray. Those will be the two colors that I use. I'm going to have it lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. So we'll be starting at the top, but I just want you to kind of, as you're painting this ground, you don't really have to think of it as anything specific, because I've been to the Eiffel Tower and I know that there's so many different types of ground based on wherever you are. There's grass, there's like sandy walkways, there's pavement, there's lots of bushes. There's so many different things in that park that it doesn't really matter what you paint for the ground, because it'll all work anyways. And this is just a fun interpretation anyways. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with white paint on my brush. And I'm going to go left to right, and I'm going to bring it right up to my sky, or the bottom of my sky. And this does not have to be a perfectly straight line because we're painting land. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come about halfway down this area with white paint, and then I'll start picking. I won't wash my brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of my gray, and I'm going to get it to blend in with my white. So I don't want it to go too dark. I do want this ground to look much different than the sky. So I am just using a very little bit of that light gray, and I'm getting it to go down to the bottom. And again, it's okay if it's uneven throughout the ground, doesn't matter. We're going to be putting all kinds of marks on it anyways. And then we're going to be switching brushes to our small brush. So after you get done this step, you're going to want to take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to painting the first layer of our Eiffel Tower. So how we're going to do this, we're using our small paintbrush, and we're going to use just black paint. But what I'm going to recommend you do is that you water down a little bit of your black paint. So I just take a couple of drops of water and spin it around. You don't have to water down all your black paint, just a little bit in the corner. What this is going to do is it's going to make it more like an ink consistency, and allows you to make smaller, skinnier lines. And then when you go to pull your paintbrush out of your paint, what you can do is you can spin it on the side of your palette, and that'll make your paintbrush really pointy. And then when you go to do your lines, just don't press hard. So I am going to give you some markers. We're going to make a couple of dots, and then we're just going to connect the dots. So we won't get too stressed out over this looking exactly like a photograph. We're just going to have fun and give it a representational look to it. So what I'd like you to do is we're going to go eyeball about the halfway point of our canvas, and you're going to make one dot on your horizon line at about the halfway point. And then you're going to go about halfway between here and make yourself another dot. And then you're going to eyeball where the center is, and I want you to travel straight up. I gotta put my head back a little bit further, make sure I can go straight up, up, until you're about 2 or 3 inches away from the top of your canvas, and you're going to make yourself a dot. Now we're going to connect these. So You could do a really straight line to connect them, but the Eiffel Tower has almost like a little bit of feet that kind of kick out at the bottom. So that's the way that I'm going to do it. I'm going to come down and then I'll kick it out a little bit at the bottom. And we have a storm, a rainy storm going on. I just saw my lights flicker, so hopefully the lights won't go out on us. All right, so here I go. I reloaded my brush with my watered down paint. When I do this, I keep my eye on the prize, which is the dot that I'm going for, and that helps me to keep my line in control. Oh, one other thing, make sure your canvas is dry before you do this step. You could take a break or blow dry it or something. And I also brace myself by putting my pinky or my hand on my canvas. So here we go. Wish me some luck. I'm going to go from this mark here. I'm not going to press hard, and I'm going to watch my other dot. Oh, there goes my lights again a little bit. And that's my first line. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to start up at the top, and then I'm going to just slowly keep my eye on the prize, making sure I don't hit that other wet line. Something like this, kicking it out just a little bit at the end, like that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a straight line down the center to about a third of the way down. Ooh, it's like we've got some interesting mood lighting happening here. So I'm going to come down probably to about here with my straight line. So I'm just going to go right down the center, almost to the center. Mine's a little bit to the left, but that's okay. Now that I've got this center point, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another line right next to this one, about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch away from this center part, all the way down to the ground. And you can see it doesn't have to be perfect. Mine isn't even perfect. Something like that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go right from here, make myself another line, something like that. Now what I'm going to do, I've got to make a big arch in the middle. So I'm going to kind of go about the center point from here to here, somewhere about halfway up there. And that's going to be my mark. And I'm going to make an arch going from here to here. And then I'm going to make an arch going from here to here. And again, you can see that it doesn't have to be perfect. Mine is not perfect. You can sit and fiddle with it all you want, but we're just going to have fun with it like this. Now I need to make 3 observation decks. So the first one I'm going to put is right here. I'm going to put, I'm just doing a rectangle that overhangs the sides of the tower a little bit. I'm going to color it in black. Then I'm going to do another one above it. That's going to be about halfway between here and the top of my Eiffel Tower, but it's going to be more narrow because you only need it to overhang the structure just a little bit. And then I'm going to do another one right here, but it's going to be a little bit above the arch. So I'm going to go just a little bit above the arch and do myself a horizontal line from there until I overhang that structure a little bit. And now I'm going to just make myself a really big, long rectangle. It doesn't have to be super tall, just, you know, something that resembles a rectangle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little railing above this particular observation deck. So all I have to do is go up like that, make a little line there, and make another horizontal line. And then I can do a whole bunch of little vertical lines just right going through here. Whole bunch of little vertical lines. Now you have yourself a visible observation deck. I'm going to do a little ball at the top. So you can make this taller or right within there if you want. A little, almost like an oval. It reminds me of how tall this structure is. I can't even, I don't know, maybe I should guess. So in feet wise, I would say that this is, I don't know, 700 feet tall. I'm probably way off, but it's really, really tall. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make another horizontal line underneath here, just to the top of my arch. It goes right to the edge of there. And now what I'm gonna do through the legs of the Eiffel Tower is make 100 little X's. So the only part that I don't want to put X's in is this one triangle right here. So I'm going to go really fast and just make a ton of tiny little X's. They don't have to be systematic. They can be messy X's. I'm just using the edge of, or the tip of my brush, and I'm just going to kind of keep going as I do this, and I'm going to go up all of these little sections, and they don't have to be perfect X's. You're just given the illusion. This is made of a whole bunch of metal, and the X's are just representational of all of that ironwork and stuff that make up this really beautiful building. Or building, is it a monument? It's a tower, which is a building, I guess, a type of a building. So I'm just going to continue to do this, and when I went to go see this, it's funny when I do these paintings, often I just sit here and think about the things that happened when I was there. I ate snails while I was there. I had escargot. So you're lucky I didn't make, you know, some weird cookie with escargot in it. So.
Yum yum.
We are going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this all nice and colored in, you can put the small brush away in your water cup and take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're doing for the next step, we're using our medium brush, and we are adding texture, a textural kind of effect to the ground. So it looks like it's got some elements to it. I'm going to be doing it with a left to right brush stroke, and I'm going to be using black, gray, either one of your grays, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be leaving an open area down the middle, and I'll give you guidance as to where to leave it open, so that way it pulls our eyes right into looking at the Eiffel Tower. So here I go. I'm going to start with black and a gray on my brush at the same time. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of give you some markers how far to go, and then we will just make our swishy marks. So I'm going to come down below my Eiffel Tower, maybe about, I don't know, an inch or so. And I'm really just making left to right almost dashes. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to come almost to this corner, maybe a little bit to the left of the corner. And then over here, I'm going to do the same thing left to right, and I'm going to bring it down to this corner. So this way I've left this whole area untouched. Now I'm just going to pick up one of those colors, and I'm just going to make these messy kind of left to right marks. I don't want to overblend it because I want it to look different than the sky. This is just so we can have something other than a white ground down there. So this definitely gives you the illusion of, you know, texture down on the ground, and it's going to help to make our trees, when we put those on there, so they don't look like they're floating in the air. This will definitely help to ground our trees. So I'm just going to kind of keep going left to right. You can swirl your brush around a little bit, do some fun little marks, and then we are going to use the same brush for the next step. So when you get done putting your texture on the ground, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting on our tree trunks and our branches. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using just black paint. So I will be using a lot of paint on my brush during this process, and you could water it down just a little bit for your skinnier branches. But my goal here is I go fast when I do my branches, and I don't think about it much because I want them to look natural. So by having a lot of paint on my brush, I can just almost like flick my brush here and there, and that'll create some branches. So how I'm going to do this, I am going to have 4 trees on my left and 3 trees on my right, and I want them to look like they're getting larger as they come to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a couple of little markers. I have just black paint on my brush. I'm going to make one little marker here, which is just below my horizon line. And then I'm going to make another little marker here, which is below that one. Then I'm going to make another mark here, which is below that one. And then I'm going to make my 4th one over here, which is below that one. So they're kind of in a diagonal. And then I'm going to do my 3 on the other side. So this one I'm going to put maybe a little bit closer to the horizon line. And then I'm going to put one maybe somewhere about here. And then I'll put this one maybe somewhere about here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my tree trunks. So I do it kind of in this systematic order, so I make sure that I have them in the right size that I want. So I'm going to do my little one first. So these can be any kind of trees. My head goes to big, huge maple trees, but yours could be pine trees or oak trees or birch trees or whatever kind of trees you want to make. Weeping trees, I'm going maple or apple. I guess apple and maple kind of look the same. No, maybe they don't, but these will be maple trees. Any tree, though, is a little bit wider at the bottom than it is up top. So as I do this little trunk, I'm going to make sure it's a touch wider at the bottom than it is at the top. We'll do our branches in a minute, but I want to get my tree trunks in place, and each one is going to get taller and wider as it comes towards me being the person over here on the left. So you can have them start to fork if you want to, but just make sure that bottom part is a little bit wider. And then this one's going to be even wider than that one. And I want the place where it starts to fork up higher than the one before. So I'm going to just kind of get this one started here. And then I have my biggest one is going to be over here. And this one is going to be really large. It's going to be the closest one to us. So it's almost twice as wide as that one is. And again, you can really have it forking, you know, as much as you want to. And then I'm going to go do the other ones, and we'll do our branches in a minute. I just want to get my trunks in place. So this one is just a really tiny one over here. And the tiny ones, you don't have to push hard. My next one is somewhere here that I want to be a little bit taller than that one. And then I can get it to start forking whenever I want. And then, oops, I need to get that bottom a little bit wider just so it looks a little bit more natural. And then I've got my really big one over here. And if it hits the side of your canvas, that's okay. That'll make it look even more interesting. So again, I'm just kind of getting this to go up here. All right, so now I'm going to start with my branches. I'm going to do my big trees first because they will dictate where the heads of the smaller ones are. So again, I'm using a lot of paint. These one, especially this one on the left, I want branches all the way up to the top. So I've got tons of branches coming. I know I'm going to have the head of this tree right in through here, so I don't want them to drop too much lower than that, but you can certainly have some going above it. So know that when you're doing these branches, they can cross over one another. They don't have to just occupy their own space. And the more branches you have, the better. A lot of times I am hardly touching my canvas, but I have a lot of paint on my brush, which allows me to get these really long, kind of narrow branches. And we also are going to be putting leaves on them too, so they don't have to be perfect. But the more you have, especially out on the exterior, the more natural it will look. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move right on to my next one. The big ones are, you know, going to take up the most amount of time. And now I'm going to just kind of move on to this one. And I know that I'm going to have the leaves over on the left side. So I'm not really going to care too much, but I think I want a branch coming out over here. It felt like it needed one, so I'm going to put one. Wherever you want there to be branches coming out, you just have fun with it. Again, I'm not using much pressure on my brush, and you could certainly, as you get to these smaller trees, you could certainly use your smaller brush, So don't feel the need to use this medium brush if it's difficult for you to make the smaller branches. Certainly feel free to change to that smaller brush. And even on this little tiny one, I'm not really going to do much. I'm just kind of using the tip of my brush. I know that I'm going to be having all these leaves on here that are going to occupy our sight and our visual senses, so I don't really need a ton on there. And then here we go. I'm into this big tree over here, and again, I know that I'm going to have all of these leaves and stuff that are going to be occupying so much of this space, so I'm not terribly concerned about this being perfect. I'm just trying to fill the space. I want this one a little bit shorter than this one, so that's why I kind of stopped it there. And then I'm going to go ahead and make myself a couple little branches coming off of this one. And you can see at this point, I'm just kind of wiggling my brush a little bit and just using the tip of it. So that way you can kind of see the branches underneath the leaves that we're going to be putting in a minute. And then we are going to be using the same, or no, we're going to, what brush should we use? Let's use our big brush for the next step. I had to think about that one. So we'll put the medium brush away in your water cup, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting the first layer on the leaves of our trees. So I'm going to be using my big brush, and I'm going to be using blue and red paint. I'm going to be doing blue trees on the left and red on the right. We are in a future step going to be using white paint also on these leaves, and I thought it would be pretty cool to use the French flag colors. So the French flag colors are red, white, and blue. So I thought that this would be really neat to incorporate these colors in through here. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be applying my paint with a dotting technique. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But when I'm doing the trees, I'm going to leave one little section of the tree branches that doesn't have leaves on it, and that's where our birds are going to fly out of later. I will be using a lot of paint on my brush, and I don't dot 1,000 times so it doesn't all mush together. And if you run into some wet black paint, it's okay. Just dot it in there. It'll work out. It actually will look probably better. So here I go. I'm going to pick up a whole bunch of blue paint on my brush, and I'm going to start with my big tree, and I'm just going to start dotting away. I reload my brush really, really often, but you can see I'm leaving some of my branches showing through. You can even bring these leaves over to the side, and I'm getting all the way into the interior of the tree, but again, I'm leaving some of those branches visible. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this little corner up here without leaves on it, and then I'm just going to go ahead and move to my next tree over here. And again, I'm just using the end of my brush. As I get to the smaller trees, I'll probably use the corner of my brush. And you can see I'm going to leave this little area right here. Maybe I'll put a little bit more right in through here. And then right now I'm going to start using just a little corner of my brush. I'm going to leave that top right hand corner of the tree without leaves on it. And I'm doing the same thing right here. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to wash and dry my brush really quickly so I can have some red leaves on the other side. So I washed it, I'm drying it, now I'm picking up a whole bunch of red. I'm going to start dotting over here on the side. And again, I'm using thick paint, and I like to use the thick paint so it's not terribly see-through. So this way it's really heavy and it really resembles real leaves. And again, you can go right in the middle, just kind of, if you can leave some of those branches kind of poking out. And I'm going to leave some section up in through here where my birds can fly out of. I'm going to do the same thing to this little tree right here. I'm going to just use the corner of my brush because this tree's kind of small in through here. And then I'm going to leave that section right there for my birds. And same thing right here. Just kind of using the little corner of my brush. And then we are going to switch to our medium brush for the next step. So once you get your leaves on, you can put your large brush away in your water cup, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing now is we're putting the colored part on the ground. So I'm going to leave this middle area without paint. I'm going to be putting blue on the left side, red on the right side, and then I'm going to put both red and blue in the middle, because that's where everything's going to converge near that beautiful tower, just like the park. So in this park, everybody converges in this park. They have their picnics, they have their family reunions, they, get married in the park. This is just, everything happens in this park. Everything comes at a boiling point, not at a boiling point, at a happy point at the tower. So we're going to bring all these colors together in the middle. So I'm going to start with my blue. So I've got my medium brush, and I'm going to do similar marks that I did initially for those squiggles underneath there, only now I'm using blue, and I'm going to do it in front of the trees. So I'm not going to go behind the trees. So this might be, it's just some fun colors that we're adding to the canvas. You can imagine it to be reflections or shadows or whatever you want. But I'm going to go down in through here, and then I'm going to bring it across the whole area where the Eiffel Tower is. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put some red on it, and I'm going to go do the same thing on the red side. So I've got red paint on my brush, and I'm just kind of wiggling it left to right, in front or to the left of those trees. And then I will get it to go in the middle to intermingle with the blue. And then we are going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you get this all done, you can put your medium brush away in your water cup, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we are putting the highlight on our tower. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using just white paint. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to have it on the left-hand side, and I'm not going to use a lot of paint, just a teeny tiny bit of white paint on my brush, and I like to spin it on the side of my palette. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it on each observation deck and on the ball part at the top. So really all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a white line down the left-hand side, and then I just pull that paint into that piece of structure. You could even do it for this observation deck. You could put a little bit on the top of it. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I do one line on the left-hand side, and then I just take my brush and pull that paint while it's still wet. And then I got to reload my brush a little bit here. So I'm going to put my white line on the left-hand side, and then I just pull that paint a little bit into that particular piece of the structure. So again, one last one up here on the ball part. I put my white line, and now I am just pulling it into that piece. And then we are going to be using this small brush for the next step as well. So just wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting our birds. So these birds are meant to look like, if they were all just sitting nestled in the tree, that they would be these leaves. It's just meant to be this really cool illusion. So I'm going to use all the colors that are going to be in the tree for my birds. So right now I have blue and black. But I'm also going to be adding white to my tree later, so I can use black, blue, and white. And I'm going to be making birds fly out of each tree, and I'm going to have a couple of them come to my tower, maybe even cross over onto the red side. So when I'm making these, you can make them in all different kinds of ways. You don't just have to make the same type of bird the whole time. These birds could be, I don't know, they could be hawks or chickadees, or maybe, there can't be flamingos because I don't think flamingos fly, but they could be any kind of bird that you want them to be. You could even pop a penguin in there if you want. Oh wait, penguins don't fly either. I know a lot about non-flying birds apparently. So how I'm going to do this is I'm just going to make a series of marks. So you don't really have to think, oh, this has to look exactly like a bird. So I'm going to do a couple with blue first so you can kind of see how I'm going to do that. I'm using my small brush, And I'm gonna do my big tree first so you can see them really nice. I'm gonna have some sitting in the tree, and to sit them in the tree, I'm really just doing a vertical line. You can have as many as you want sitting in that tree. And then if I want them to look like they're flying out of the tree, I can do something like that. I'm going to use a little bit of black now so you can kind of see if I was to do it in black. So these are in essence a series of, again, just marks. It could maybe look like a check mark. You could have one side taller than the other. It could end up looking kind of like an X, like almost like an airplane or something. So you can really have as many as you want going in. You could even have them flying in the opposite direction. So I'm going to do a whole bunch with black. I'll do a whole bunch with blue. I'll do a whole bunch with white. Maybe you have, you know, the wings and then a little head sticking out. Maybe you have, you know, a nice little tail feather. That one's got a lot of detail on it. So just know that you can have a whole bunch going in a lot of different directions. I'm going to just kind of cruise along here now that I've explained the different shapes of them. But the key here is to just have a whole bunch of different ones going in different directions, maybe different sizes. I'm going to start using a little bit of white so you can see what happens when I've got white with them. So right now I have blue and white on my brush at the same time. And you can, if you do them in little clusters, you can have really teeny tiny ones down, you know, that will make it look like they're really, really far away. So really you just have a whole bunch of fun making these. I'm going to have a couple flying right in front of my Eiffel Tower, maybe going over to the red side. And again, you can have them going in different directions. I still have a lot of white and blue on my brush. I want to fill in this area. You want a ton. The more you have, the more it's going to give the illusion that these are coming right out of the tree. I'm going to put some right over this branch here. And again, just try and keep them a little bit different from one another, especially when they're next to each other. Again, maybe you have a really, you know, big one. Maybe this one is the closest one to you. You know, maybe it's got a pretty wing and then the little head. I don't know, just have fun with it. You can have, you know, a couple of big ones that'll make it look like they are the closest one. They can fly in front of each other too. That happens in nature. They definitely, when you're looking at a whole flock of birds, they seem to kind of intermingle with one another. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to make some coming out of this tree here. And because this one is a smaller tree, I'll try and keep them a little bit smaller. Maybe I'll have a couple sitting in the tree too. And again, we're going to be using white later too. So you can certainly use a little bit of white on your birds. I'm going to get some coming out of here too. And again, you can really have a whole bunch of them, or maybe you just have a couple, whatever works for you. But my hand is just cruising right along because I just like to make little marks to give the impression that these are in fact birds just flying right out of the tree. Maybe I make a couple of little tiny dots over there as if they're wicked far away. And maybe this one's got to go a little bit higher. I'm going to do a couple of dark ones now too. A couple of black ones going out of this tree here. And again, sometimes you might just make little tiny marks, and that's going to give the impression that they're way far off in the distance. But again, you can do check marks or X's, or that like that M that we do so often for these little birds. You want to have a lot in that tree coming out of the tree. And then in a minute, I'm going to wash my brush and I'm going to start doing the red side. But I don't have as many trees on the red side, so it might not take as long. But again, just put as many birds on here as you want. I'm putting a couple of little white ones now. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to go over to that red side, and I'm going to get some red ones to cross over into the blue side too. So I just washed and dried my brush. I'm just going to follow the same kind of thought process. I'm going to have a whole bunch sitting in the tree. I'm going to have some flying out of the tree. Maybe some are X's. Maybe some have, you know, distinct wings to them. Maybe this one is going to be right over that one. Maybe I use a little bit of white in some of them, you know, so you just really have a lot of fun. You can put them you know, maybe even going back into the tree. Maybe that one's like, hey, I want to come back. You know, just have fun with it. I'm going to do some black ones now. And I'm going to do some little tiny ones way off in the distance, just kind of trailing off, giving the illusion or the impression that there's a whole bunch of birds just flocking their way either to or from this tree. I'm putting a bunch in here just to kind of, you can even, you know, I'm almost like little speckling right now, you know, but I just want to give the illusion that there's a ton of birds all in through here. So I'm going to do some more red ones. I just loaded my brush with red because I definitely want to have some crossing over into the blue side. And again, you can do X's. You know, sometimes our brains just make us want to do the same one. So if you feel like some of yours look pretty similar to the rest, just kind of step back, or sometimes I suggest that you turn your canvas. That allows our brain to function a little bit differently, and we can start to create birds that are going in different directions. So maybe this one just is, you know, flying with the flock of the blue ones. So you can really just have a lot of fun with getting these two different, you know, flocks of birds to intermingle with each other. I'm going to just kind of put a couple more in through here. I know I'm going to put some down coming out of these trees here too, but I'm just going to kind of, I know that these are going to be really, really tiny, so I'm just almost making little dots, giving the illusion that these are just birds or something flying out of that tree. And when I get done with this step, I'm going to be switching back to the large brush. So once you get all of your birds just flying out of your tree, you can put this small brush away in your water cup, and you're going to take out your large brush. Now I'm going to slow down because I want a couple of distinct ones in through here. You can take out your large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do in this step is we are finishing our trees. So I am going to be using red, blue, and white. We are going to have to wash our brush in between going from one side to the other. So I'm going to start with my red side. I'm using my big bristle brush, and I'm going to be using a dotting technique. So what this is going to do is it's going to make these trees look more three-dimensional. So I am going to put a little bit of white on my brush, not a lot, and I'm going to start to kind of just dot in some of these bright highlights of the tree. And you might put a little bit in front of the birds. You might put some next to the birds, wherever you feel like you need a little bit of highlight. And once I get the white on there, then I'm going to pick up some red. So now I have white and red on my brush. And I'm just going to kind of blend it in a little bit, but not a lot. This is going to make it look really three-dimensional. And again, you can add more if you want to, or less. This is just gonna poof it out and make it look nice and fluffy, and that it's got a lot of dimension to it. And then I'm gonna wash and dry my brush, and I'm gonna put blue and white. Well, I'm gonna start with white, and then I'll put some blue on it. So I've got white on my brush right now, and I'm just kind of dotting kind of where I had my leaves before, but you might cross over into where the birds are a little bit if you want it to be brighter. I'm going to put a little bit in through here too, and then I'll put a little bit on this tree and a little bit on this tree. There's more trees over here. Now I'm going to pick up blue with my white. I didn't wash my brush, so now I'm going to get this really neat 3D effect of these leaves just kind of popping out of my canvas. And then I have one tiny little step left to go after this, and it's going to be done with my small brush. So once you've got enough leaves on your trees, you can put this big brush away in your water cup and take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step, which is the final step of any painting, which is to sign it. So I'm going to use my small brush. I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. You could sign yours wherever you want. I'm going to be using black paint, and I'm going to sign mine with my initials. I'm going to do it over here in the bottom left today. I do my initials. You could do your first name, you could do the date, you could do a symbol. Whatever you want to do is totally fine by me. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you love your painting as much as I do, and perhaps Remy does from Ratatouille, for those of you who've seen that movie. I'm sure he'd be proud of our Eiffel Tower paintings. Hope you enjoyed your cookie, and I look forward to painting canvases and eating cookies with you again sometime.